So guys, today we have Mr. Bob Layton.
We've all met already.
Martin Pierro. So we're gonna talk a little bit about crafting your story in comics and novels, and last year we had kind of a different one about world building and crafting like your characters and stuff like that, Bob. And so this year we kind of just put that together because the conversation always went to both of those anyway.
Right.
So I guess to kind of start out, and maybe you guys talked to this panel yesterday, when you were working with Tony, when you got kind of that handle on Tony Stark, and you kind of created the character out of this metal suit that had been the main character for so long.
Yeah.
What was kind of the thought behind that? Where did that?
Well, like I said yesterday, as a 15-year-old boy, I didn't see Iron Man as a viable alternative for lifestyle for me. I didn't really see wearing armor and going out and fighting crime as something that I was really motivated to do. But at 15, being super wealthy and having all the girls and all the toys and all the money in the world seemed like, okay, that's an achievable goal. Yeah. And I was always saying, why isn't this guy a rock star? Why isn't he more famous than Iron Man? Why doesn't he not walk into a room and people lose their minds? Because that's what I would, and that's achievable. I think if you're a 15-year-old kid, it's like, who would want to be Tony Stark, right? I mean, heck with Iron Man, but they never focused on Tony. In comics, it was always, everybody's a millionaire. Batman's a millionaire who's traumatized, and he uses the money to basically, finance his war on crime. The difference is, Bruce Wayne is a facade. Batman is the actual real person. He became Batman from the day his parents were killed. And Bruce Wayne is who he poses as when he has to function in the real world, but most psychotics don't function well in the real world, so you make him a billionaire, it's easier, right? But the truth of the matter, that's the opposite, with Tony Stark. Tony Stark's always Tony Stark. That's the way he should be. And my thing is, I want people to relate to him. When he put the helmet on, you still felt it was Tony in there. Mm-hmm. That's something that nobody ever really gave a lot of thought to in terms of expanding his role. Because to me, I saw Tony Stark as an achievable goal, in life. I mean, I didn't make it exactly, but I had my fun. Don't get me wrong, I had my fun though, okay?
Yeah.
But I kind of always felt like that's the kind of thing we want our heroes to, like, if they do have these advantages, we want to see them enjoying them. Wouldn't you?
Right. Yeah.
Wouldn't you, if you were in his spot? Wouldn't you try to enjoy your life to the fullest? So I always used Iron Man as an analog to King Arthur because I was always a fan of Knights of the Round Table growing up, right? And to me, Tony was always King Arthur. His kingdom was this global conglomerate, Stark Industries. His Knights of the Round Table were the Avengers. But they weren't his friends. That's the other thing. I had to give him a friend. I read all the book Iron Man said Tony never had a friend.
Yeah.
He was an island. That's why we created Rhodey. Because I don't know any millionaire who doesn't have a posse. So
everyone.
It's just I don't think it was. It was just not a concept that was ever thought through entirely. People don't realize too that Stan never actually wrote Iron Man. It was like he came up with the idea and gave it to his brother Larry, who was no Stan Lee, by the way. I know that because I had to write the foreword to the Tales of Suspense Omnibus, and they made me go back and reread all that stuff. Oh, wow. It was pretty ghastly, to say the least. So, yeah, it was one of those things where when I was 11 years old, I used to make my own Iron Man comics, because I always said, they just don't get it,
Right.
Yeah, and it's like, so just being in the right place at the right time, I happened to luck on it when I started at Marvel, and they let me do what I want. The rest is history.
Right.
Was there a moment when you're working on Iron Man, do you think that 11-year-old Bob Layton's like, dude, you're doing it?
Well, I told you Doom Quest, which is the story of Dr. Doom and Tony Stark in the days of King Arthur, was a story I came up with when I was 11 years old. I did it on notebook paper.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Don't ever throw any of your ideas out.
Right.
Trust me. Sometimes you look at them as an adult later on, there's always a germ of something there that works. And that turned out to be a classic Iron Man story that they reprinted a million times. But I did it on notebook paper when I was 11 years old.
Right. So Martin, is there a character that you have worked on? Like, what is your, when you go to create a character, like what does that look like for you? What do you kind of focus on and think about when you're creating a character?
Well, it's funny that my background is film, so everything to me is always through the lens of film. It's funny you mentioned you're a big fan of King Arthur. Actually, the first thing I ever published, self-published, was originally to be it was devised to be a television pitch that just never did anything with, and it was King Arthur in a post-apocalyptic future. And in that, I took the character of Merlin, which I'm sure, as he ages backwards. So Merlin slowed his aging process down so he could be there 500 years in the future when Arthur returns. So in creating that version of Merlin, it was just trying to create someone who's lived a life, but yet still had this youthful, because he's aged backwards now. He's a young man now, and I don't know, where am I going with this? I just wanted to mention I did a King Arthur story.
I'm glad it's something we have in common. We both love King Arthur.
Yeah. So so in doing that, but like I say, using film, like when I created Arthur, there was like, what Arthur am I going to go with? I did a lot of research on the Mallory and the legends and all that. But my King Arthur growing up was always a Richard Harrison Camelot. I loved the movie Camelot, and I love that kind of tragic.
I was more of a John Borman Excalibur kind of
guy.
Excalibur,
yeah. Don't get me wrong, Excalibur's great.
It was so gritty and gory, and Helen Mirren was so beautiful. Oh my God. I'm like Woody Allen. I always go for the Black Queen. It's like I always like the bad girls.
I think my problem with Excalibur, I love the movie. I think it's a gorgeous movie with all the lens flare. J.J. Abrams, that's how you do lens flare. I think Arthur wasn't as well developed in that as everybody else was. I felt that doing
but he was still a tragic figure, a tragic hero, which that's Arthur's whole thing. I mean, that's why I made Tony an alcoholic. Was something that he had to live with this constant, sort of Damocles over his head, the way Arthur did. Yeah. Arthur had the weight of the world on his shoulders.
Totally. Yeah.
So what? So how many of you guys are writers in here? Anybody a writer?
I like to write as a hobby and all that stuff. And hoping one day to at least either make my own comic book series, because I like to draw a lot and have some illustrations here. In fact, I came up with something new yesterday.
Cool.
And the other, or just become a writer, just make a novel series or short stories, whatever, and sell it.
Good stuff. Well, is there anything for the writers in the room as far as character creation that you could some tips or thoughts, maybe think outside of the box where, it's what you guys have been talking about. It's not just, I'm going to just redo this character and just give him a different color t-shirt. It's, let's see what this character, let's really get in the character's head, What
I think getting in the character's head is the key. That's one thing you want, at least in my experience, always try to avoid writing in your own voice. You don't want the characters all sounding like you. Maybe one or two, for ego's purpose. But that's me. But as far as trying to find the voices,
I definitely put my sarcasm into Tony Stark. So.
Yeah.
But you can't have everybody be sarcastic.
No, it's true.
Right.
But, we're all guilty of that to some degree.
Yeah.
Because we see the characters through the lens of our own eyes,
right?
And how we relate to that stuff. I mean, to have a totally out-of-body experience, because the standard thing, you can only write what you know.
Exactly.
So it's convincingly. So people still do it. But you're asking about character. What are you talking about in terms of character? Character is everything. That's the main thing. People come up and I got this great idea where the Legion of Superheroes fight the Avengers in Japan, while a volcano's going off. Well, that's not a story. I mean, that's my trouble with a lot of the Marvel movies. They're not stories; they're episodes. And I think one thing you got to remember when you're telling a story that you have to have conflict, and true conflict is always internal. It's not external. Externals are dilemmas and problems. Conflict, true conflict, comes from within, always. And I can use a lot. I can even use Star Wars.
I was going to say Han Solo,
which I hate. I hate Star Wars, as you know. But I can use that as a prime example because everyone's seen it. And the thing about conflict, true conflict, is that it leaves your character inexorably changed as a result of the resolution. And you look at something even as juvenile as Star Wars. Is Luke Skywalker the same person at the end of the movie as he is in the beginning? No, because the resolution of his personal conflict has changed him. I mean, you look at Ripley in Alien. Is she the same, or Aliens?
Oh, definitely
is she the same person at the end as she was in the beginning? No, because the resolution of her personal struggle with these monsters, these things that have just, dominated her life, changes her inexorably when she faces her fear. The movie's not about how many people die in the film, gory and get sprayed by acid and stuff. It's about Ripley. It's about her struggle to overcome this numbing fear that has plagued her in her dreams, has ruined her life. It destroyed her life, pretty much. That's what makes that movie resonate with people. That's why it is still a classic, because the resolution of conflict will change that character forever.
Well,
Iron Man.
I would say the first Iron Man movie.
First Iron Man movie is
Yeah.
exactly
Yeah.
why I still say it's the best comic to film movie done, because Tony Stark's a different guy at the end of that movie.
Right.
Because facing the conflict and the realization of what he's done, has changed him inexorably as a result. I mean, he's still Tony. But the point of it is that he's a more benign, more understanding person. He sees a larger world than what he was in before. And that's what you got to be thinking about when you're writing a story. What is that true conflict, the internal conflict with the character, and how resolving that conflict inexorably changes them. When you look at the Avengers, and I came out of the Avengers like, okay, it was a lot of fun, but it's just an episode. Nothing. They're all the same at the end of the movie they were in the beginning.
The Avengers are kind of a climax as well. The whole
Well,
movie.
no, but I'm
climax.
just saying it's not really a story. It's an episode.
Yeah.
I mean, real stories change. Characters are changed at the end. Yeah.
What if you have accidentally written a flawless character? How would you suggest
I can't say I've ever had that happen, but
not flawless, but like without a problem to solve. If you've made a character,
well, you're going to have a hard time
that
finding a
doesn't
conflict for a character
Yeah.
like that. That's why godlike characters are
Yeah.
really hard to write. We had that problem with Solar at Valiant, because Solar was like a god.
Well, that's a Superman
Yeah.
thing. Let's come up with kryptonite.
Yeah.
There's
Hubris.
nothing.
But I'm saying any sentient being has flaws, but the conflict can be a moral conflict. It can be a variety of things. If your perfect character has trouble because his very perfection causes conflict in the world,
I've had trouble.
that's called
writing
Christ
human
syndrome,
characters.
right? Perfect
Same.
person starts the whole world on fire because there's somebody who's
that goes to what we talked about earlier about was it the Last Jedi. Everybody in that movie, everything just kind of works out for them in the easiest way possible.
Don't get me started.
I don't want to think about it.
No. I mean, I do a whole lecture about how Star Wars is not necessarily great film. All right, I know they're fun, but they're not. It's not. They aren't great stories, because George Lucas did not understand archetypes. He read Joseph Campbell's stuff and who wrote the textbook on heroes, which you should all read. That, by the way, Hero with 1,000 Faces by Joseph Campbell. If you're a writer, you should probably read that because it breaks down all the archetypes that you use in heroic fiction. George had no comprehension of what he read because Luke is a hero that basically constantly rescued by his friends. To me, a hero is a guy who gets a hole blown in his heart and builds an armor out of a tin can with a ball-peen hammer. It takes out his enemies. These are self-actuated guys. I mean, he saw Han Solo as this bad guy who kind of hangs out with the good guys, and that's not it. Star Wars is a Han Solo story. How he got sucked into the Skywalker's dysfunctional family. But the point of it is, I mean, Lawrence Kasdan came in, who is a decent writer, looks at the Star Wars things and sits down to write Empire, and it's a Han Solo story with Luke as a guest star. I mean, it's basically a Han Solo story.
Actually,
because he saw the archetypes as they were.
Actually, the movie opens with Han Solo rescuing Luke
Yes,
Skywalker.
yes.
Right.
But I'm saying it's always that Luke's always being rescued by somebody. That's not a hero. I mean, in the first movie, Han saves him. In the second movie, his sister saves him. In the third movie, his dad has a deathbed confession and saves him. And it's like to me, that's not a hero. Because to me, a hero is somebody who's self-actuated, like Ripley. Ripley's somebody who, because of her love for Newt, overcomes her fear and faces the terror, the thing that she's been running from all her life. Yeah, I mean, Luke's just like, I'll just wait for some big guy to come save me or whatever. You're right. He got saved twice in that movie. It's like, I wouldn't want to be a Jedi, man. I'd rather be Han Solo any day than a Jedi.
Bounty hunters.
Because like in the Transformer movie, they also have Sarah Witwicky who gets saved by the Transformers. But it's also obvious because he's dealing with ginormous robots that can break through walls.
Yeah.
But is Sam those Michael Bay Transformers movies? Who is the central character?
Yeah.
Well,
Sam,
yeah,
is it?
Yeah.
No, but stories are stories, whether it's something we actually relate to or not. You get the general idea, though. It's always important when you're constructing a character that in order to make a story really resonate, for it to have what you would call guts as a writer, you have to invest in the hero's personal conflict. That's what's important. It's like there's a lot of great external stuff can happen, but if it's just meaningless stuff, volcanoes in Japan, those aren't stories. Those are just situations. Those are dilemmas. That's not conflict. And stories are built from conflict.
So that goes into the kind of the next thing, creating a world. It needs to start with the conflict of the characters and how they interact with that world. Correct?
Yeah, it depends on the character, but
or the effects the world is having on them and what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, in the case of something like Solar, well, what I did was I just had him destroy the entire world in the opening, and he was thrown into an alternate universe where he spends his entire life trying to make amends for what
he did in the previous.
Yes, what he did in the previous life. Yes, that's how you deal with an omniscient character like that. It's basically load a lot of guilt onto them.
What about a character that was born not human and they live amongst humans and
That's Superman.
Is the struggle supposed to be them just trying to live amongst humans?
But is that really a conflict? That's a problem. Because he's either successful or not successful, right?
Yeah.
See, the conflict is there's some consequence to living amongst humans that he has to deal with internally. Well, will that ultimately cause a disaster? Will that ultimately change him to the point where he's no longer who he is anymore?
Yeah.
Will he lose himself in that?
Yeah.
I mean, you're right. Superman is an alien who lives amongst us. But I'm also from the Tarantino school. Superman looks at human beings like they're idiots. Because that's his interpretation of us as Clark Kent, the bumbling idiot who can't do anything right. That's the way he sees us. I really agree with that. I always thought that was kind of like a very poignant Tarantino moment when Kill Bill 2. Did you ever see that? Because David Carradine's character talks about Superman and the fact that Clark Kent is his evaluation of who we are as human beings. He sees us as cowardly and clumsy, and because he's really Kal-El from the planet Krypton, right?
Right. Well, when his dad growing up said, "No, you need to hide this," all he saw was, "Well, I've got to act like this. I've got to be like this.
But that's an allegory for just being different too. I mean, regardless of what we're all of us feel different in some way from everyone else, don't we? None of us grow up thinking we're just like everybody else, or we're, quote, normal. We wouldn't be here at this con if we're all normal, right?
Exactly. The only thing that is normal is change.
Well, change is a constant. Change is a constant, yes. And that's something you have to keep in mind as a writer.
Well, that's something I wanted to ask you about yesterday. Sorry, David. With Iron Man and character arc and character change and development, it's still with the format of comics, you kind of have to leave the character a certain way. You have to kind of leave it how you found them, don't you, for the next writer? Or how does that...
Well, no, characters can evolve. I mean, you're limited to how far they can evolve, but they have to evolve in order to remain interesting because, as I said in yesterday's panel, comics is always a reflection of what's happening in society. We're a mirror that reflects what's happening in popular culture or wherever like that. And when I came in, Marvel was going through a renaissance period anyway. I mean, like I said, Frank Miller was doing Daredevil, Walt Simonson was doing Thor, Byrne and Claremont were doing the Avengers. All those books were being renovated from the early, simpler Stan Lee stuff to a more sophisticated audience. I mean, because our readers were college level now,
And in all fairness, the cinematic Marvel is based on that time.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not the Lee.
Well, they better not base it on later times, or the movies are going to bomb.
Sure.
But I'm just saying, or in the case of there's some of them like Guardians of the Galaxy, James Gunn just cut them from whole cloth. I mean, that was one of those cases where he took basically a comic nobody could give away and turned it into a $1 billion franchise.
Right.
But that's also somebody who sits down and thinks about the character. It was no different from me coming into Iron Man, looking at it and seeing it with different eyes. Gunn looked at that property and said, that's perfect for me. I don't understand why people never figured this out.
Right.
Because it's like even Wonder Woman. Has never been a popular comic. It's struggled through its entire career because only until recently has there even been a female audience for female characters. Because no 11-year-old boy wants to be Wonder Woman. They want to be Superman.
Right.
If you're going to live vicariously, right? I didn't want to be Wonder Woman. I would be awkward hanging out with her, but but yeah, actually being her, living vicariously through her, no, So
when I think about these seasons of shows, like TV shows that go on 10 seasons, in the first 5 or so seasons, you're like, oh, it's all right, but there gets to a point where the love interest is coming together, and that they've dealt with these issues so long that you just kind of. There's just not much else.
Well, when you're pitching in Hollywood, the first thing that producers ask you is if you come up with a TV show idea, is they ask you, what's episode 59?
Huh.
You know why they say that? Because at 60, you get the syndication.
That's true. That's right.
And that's what they're interested in.
7 seasons.
They're like, you come up with a great idea, they're going to go, okay, so what happens in episode 59? I've had that asked me more than once.
Wow.
And you better have an answer for them, because if you don't, you're done.
Yeah. Go home.
Because, you got to think about long term. Well, syndication's not so true now, because a show can be a hit and be on for 4 seasons.
Right.
The paradigm has changed thanks to subscription television.
Right.
But I'm just saying in the old days, 10 years ago, if you're out in Hollywood, I've been in hundreds of pitches, okay? And it's always, you better be ready to answer the question, what is episode 59?
Check my notes real quick.
Because to them, you got to remember in Hollywood, 60 is the magic number, because once you go into syndication, that's when you make the money.
Right.
Because you get paid on every episode. If the local TV station here is running MASH, you get money, and that money will come to you in perpetuity.
Or even Magnum PI.
Whatever.
Yeah.
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
if it's an old show that keeps running, you got enough to go into syndication. Back then, that was the golden ticket. Because basically everybody gets paid forever.
But to an extent, are comics? Are you still seeing royalties from the trade paperbacks?
Yeah, I get $1.98 or whatever.
Something. Yeah.
No, the sales are so poor on those things. I mean, I still get royalties. It depends on what the thing is. I mean, I own a piece of War Machine, so I get really good money from that.
Oh, good.
I own the Huntress. So I get really good. We got Birds of Prey movie coming up.
Huntress was you.
Yeah, me and Paul Levitz. Yeah.
Okay, kind of an Elseworldy future Batman. What was it? Earth 2?
Was Earth 2?
Yeah, Earth 2. That's right.
Yeah. But they created an Earth 1 version, but it doesn't matter because we started it, so they still have to pay us for whatever version it is.
Right.
So I've been getting royalties steady on her for 40 years.
Nice.
Yeah, if she's on a T-shirt, she's on anything. You play her in an MMO. So go play her at an MMO.
Everybody download the
Uncle
Huntress
Bob gets
skin.
paid.
Yeah.
But the comics themselves, I mean, I'll get a check from every 6 months or whatever, but it's a pittance. It's like you buy my groceries that week. I mean, the old days, they used to be huge. Back when comics were selling
Sure.
vast sums.
Yeah, I went back and I reread one of my old scripts that I worked on, and Lost was on at the time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, there's a lot, and I'm reading there's a lot of Lost in here, and I didn't not even realize.
But we all borrow from other things.
Yeah.
But I'm saying
Right.
that's why. But I'm sitting there watching Umbrella Academy and realizing this is the Phoenix Saga from X-Men.
Well, it's just eating on itself.
It's
now.
just
Yeah.
It's the same story. It's just with the quirkier characters, but it's very much the same. They live in a big mansion. I mean, there was really nothing unique about it. I'm sitting there going, other than if you haven't read the original X-Men, then you probably will love the show.
Right.
You know?
For audiences that don't read comics,
Yeah,
it's probably great.
yeah,
Like,
exactly.
yeah.
But I'm sitting there going, because I never read the Dark Horse. I never worked for Dark Horse, so I don't know the people there. But I'm sitting there, and it seemed highly derivative to me, Because I was at Marvel when Chris and John were doing the Phoenix Saga. That's how I know about it. I had to do stuff that tied into it later, so I had to actually read them. I only read the comics that I was forced to read because, otherwise I didn't really bother.
Is that because of what Dick said? Like, this is no longer...
And to understand the business that you're in. And that's why he always taught me to learn the business side as well. Because understanding the business you're in helps you have a grasp in terms of what you're doing is commercial. What you're doing is going to appeal not only to the artistic side, to the editors, but to the people who actually sign the checks.
Sure.
Doing stuff that has a more mass appeal. I also make sure you understand why you don't get paid very much.
But do you think understanding that business is what helped you to be where you are today? Because there's some creators from those days that are still struggling.
No, I mean most guys. Most comic creators. Have no idea how the books are even made. They don't even know how they're printed. I mean, they just have very little curiosity about the actual process of the business that they're in.
Right, they're just writing or drawing.
Which to me seems kind of like, well, that's putting blinders on. You really want to understand the industry that you're working in.
Right.
I mean, even in working as a writer, you have to understand more about film than just script.
Oh, sure, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because what people, you might not understand, and I know Martin can back me up on this, comic books and film are two different things entirely.
Oh,
totally. When I went to write
they're
my
not
first-
the same.
Oh my god.
One's like, it's just like comics except they move. No, it's way different.
Well, I was the exact. I learned how to write film scripts. And I went to write a comic script. I'm like, well, this is a different animal.
Because time is not a factor with a comic.
Okay, yeah.
Time is always a factor with a moving script, where the people are alive. You always have to be cognizant of time. Where I could do the Galactus saga in three issues, in 66 pages.
Sure,
You're right,
yeah, okay.
and I can make that time slow down or speed up. Look like somebody like Steranko, who revolutionized storytelling by slowing things down, by creating breaking each movement into smaller panels. He slowed time down. You are the master of time and space when you write a comic.
That's true. It's your world.
At the same time, you only have 22 pages, so you can't do the 3-minute monologue about why your character is obsessed with broccoli.
Okay.
But you can do that in a movie. You can take if it furthers the plot. This guy has a broccoli fetish. You can do that. You have room for
Sure.
You have room for nuance in film that you don't have in comics.
Right. Translating, say, a Tarantino script into a comic would be, one issue would be a conversation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It'd be but two talking heads to the whole thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. That's why you have to understand. I mean, I was fortunate that I worked with Edward James Olmos, and I did a few scripts with him, and Eddie would just go through with a red pen and go, "That's an expression." I could do that with a body movement. He would just cut lines out saying that you got to remember because these things move, and so all the stuff that we always do descriptively,
Sure.
isn't necessary with a good actor, because a good actor can convey a ton of information with just like what I call what Ed does. If you're familiar with the actor, he has what you call the 1,000-yard stare, where he just looks at people and their blood turns cold. Some guys can really pull that off.
Yeah.
Actually, David had him as a guest about 3 years ago.
Yeah.
I know all those guys because when I work for Eddie, I know the whole crew. They're awesome,
great.
aren't they?
I love them.
They're awesome. I'm actually still friends with quite a few. Have you ever had writer's block? Because
I never believed in writing.
I don't believe in it.
But there are moments where I'm sitting and looking at my screen going.
I've never had writer's block.
But here's how I get through it. I got to finish this so I can give the script to the artist and get the book done. And I force myself to.
I've always thought that was a bit of a myth.
I did too until I could.
I've never had writer's block.
Good for you, man. Good for you. Well, I've had to force myself out of it because I got
life
deadlines.
insists. Life insists that you move on.
Right.
Yes.
I think you'll find that if you're getting paid to write, writer's block tends to go away a little.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this: when you created the Valiant, or when you worked on the creation of the Valiant universe, was there a Bible? Did you guys write a Bible that this is the universe and these are the characters and how they interact? So,
we did, as a matter of fact. Yeah. In the early days, we wanted everybody to have some kind of It was really more like a one sheet on everyone. But the idea was, since I was the cop of the universe, my job was basically to stop people from going off the reservation or whatever. But the one sheet explained the premise, explained enough about the character that they could get it. But you got to remember, I was there all the time. Okay. So, my job was every script went over my desk. So somebody, went off the reservation. I'd drag him back. And,
So then
you
the
know.
whole universe was in your head then.
Well, it started. Well, I mean, everybody contributed. It wasn't just me. I mean, I worked like a showrunner. What happened was that I would come up with the basic concept, like say Ninjak, and I would write a one sheet about Ninjak. Then what I would do once I talked to my partners and approved that's going to be the book, is I would put together the team. I would find the writer, I would find the penciler, inker, and I'd get them all together, and usually over dinner or something to make it pleasant, and basically explain what I wanted, explain what this was all about, explain this world, and then I go out and execute it, and if you do a lousy job, I'll fire you.
You'll be done.
And that's kind of what happened with most of the characters like that, because I obviously, we had 16 books. I couldn't write and draw all 16 books.
Right.
But if you know how it works with a television, it's usually the showrunner that controls the flow of the scripts or whatever, and that's why TV seems flawless from script to episode, even though they're written by different people.
Right.
That showrunner is the guy that keeps them in that universe and keeps those people in character.
Well, guys, we are out of time.
All right.
Thank you, Bob, Martin. This is great.
Thank you, David. Thank you
guys
for
being
putting this
here.
together. We hope you enjoyed this video recorded live at InfinityCon in Lake City. If you did, go ahead and hit the thumbs up button to let us know you liked it. Also, go ahead and subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so you're notified every time we put up a new video. Also, be sure to check out cosmictimes.net/DST4 to pick up your copy of our latest book, Deep Space Tragedy Issue 4, The Epic Conclusion. Also, hey, while you're on YouTube, go ahead and check out some of our other videos. We have more panels from conventions, plus all kinds of other cool stuff. Feel free to check it out. Hey, and until next time, stay cosmic.